Well, I think we can probably get going. So I'm going to be kickstarting this evening. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the launch of Islington Clean Air Parents event for the Islington Clean Air Toolkit for schools. I'm Lucy. I'm a parent of 2 children at school and nursery in the borough, and I'm also a founder of Islington Clean Air Parents. So thank you very much for joining. We're so excited about the launch, and also that this is a collaboration project that we've done with Islington Council. So we've got both the council and parents speaking this evening. We're planning to keep the meeting to an hour, so we should be finished by 8:30. First of all, we're going to be hearing from the people who've been involved in actually creating the toolkit. That includes Rowena Champion and Pollution Officer Joe Hetherington. And also, we're going to hear from 2 parents who've actually been involved in the case studies that are mentioned in the toolkit. Following that, we'll have about 20 to 30 minutes for your questions, because that's really key, is actually implementing and using the toolkit going forward. I'm so proud of hosting this evening and actually having this Clean Air Toolkit ready for other parents to use. This project is at the very core of what Islington Clean Air Parents is all about. We're a network of parents who are highly concerned about the dangers and the effects of air pollution on our children's health, as I'm sure you all are here this evening. Our aim is to reduce pollution across the whole of the borough, and for that to affect all children across all schools. Many of us actually started campaigning around our own schools for our own children, because we really wanted to see improvements for the air they're breathing at school, but came up against various different barriers, such as lack of awareness with heads, or very busy heads who are, already got a full schedule. Obviously, there can be issues around funding and actually getting some of the solutions put in place, but also finding that pathway to success. How do we actually do it? My own personal experience was I approached the head of my child's school and asked if they could look at air filtration for the school. But first responses were, there's not enough time, we're very, very busy doing other things, and realised that actually we really needed to raise the profile of the issues. Talking about it with other Islington Clean Air parents, and we found that many members had a very similar experience. How do they get the attention of the school to put it on the agenda? How do they get started? How do they actually make things happen and create change? That was the reason we wanted to create the toolkit, and based on our personal experiences. So we want to help other parents fast track their progress, and we want to do that by showing the pathway of how to do it. As mentioned, this is quite a unique collaboration between Islington Council and Islington Clean Air Parents, where we both inputted into it. We got it started, it was one of our first projects that we talked about, but when we met with Rowena Champion, we were delighted that she actually took this idea on board and agreed for us to work with the pollution officers to put this into action. Joe Hetherington worked with Helena to write much of the toolkit content, and Joe Correll worked with Rachel Swinnerton on the frequently asked questions. And on that note, I would like to thank in particular Helena, who has led this project and ensured that it got over the finish line. It's not an easy job to do when you're dealing with lots of different people. And also, the very key things that she held dear to the project is it's simple to use. It is real to our experiences, and it covers all aspects of air pollution inside and outside schools. So it's a really comprehensive document, but it's short and and straightforward, so that it's easy for somebody to pick up and take action from it. I also feel that the document's really important because it demonstrates the council's commitment to improving air quality, and all around the borough, and it outlines the steps and the actions that can be taken. That shows us and our schools that they're not recommendations, but they are good, valid options that should be looked at, and for your school to find the right options for your school. But without further ado, I would like to introduce Rowena Champion, who is the Executive Member for Environment and Transport, and she's going to give us some of her insight and thoughts about the toolkit. So, Rowena, I hope you're ready to unmute yourself and talk to us.
Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be invited here tonight. I do feel a bit of a fraud because, yes, when I was approached by Islington Clean Air parents and the officers, I was really keen that we actually took this forward. It's a really important collaboration, but actually I'm not the one who's done the work for this. So it's amazing. The officers and, as you said, Clean Air parents have really put some work into this, really thought through how you do this and how we get to the goal of encouraging and enabling more parents to take this forward. So I'm really grateful for all those people who've been involved in this, because it's so important. We can, as a council, we can do things. So, for example, we have a dedicated air quality team who can work and can do things. They can do things. But actually, the most important thing is to communicate. And we can help you, but the real power comes from when it's parents like you talking to other parents. And I think this is what this toolkit will do, and it will hopefully show other people that it is possible. Because I think, as Lucy said, that when you first start looking at this and you're thinking, well, how do we do it? Actually, sometimes there can be these real hurdles that just crop up, often at a very early stage. And this is the sort of thing that really can guide people and help people. And actually, just having Islington Clean Air parents and Jo and her team here as well has also some practical advice for people. So there are people, there is a network around who can really help people who are interested in doing this, take this forward. And for me, actually, that's the most important thing of this collaboration. I mean, we have done other things. We have worked with schools as a council, so the School Streets programme. We're very proud of that. But actually, it's the work we do as a community that will make the real difference. I'm not going to go on, because I think actually it's more important that we hear from Lucy and from Clean Air parents and from Jo than from me. But I just want to say again, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you so much for the work you're doing, not just on the toolkit, but on campaigning around the borough to try and improve the health and well-being of not just our children, but also other vulnerable adults as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rowena. That's fabulous. I mean, it does make a big difference for us when we know that the council is really committed to making a difference and reducing reducing air pollution. I'm sure lots of people have lots of questions for you, but having the can-do and the sort of go-aheads on these things actually, has made a lot of difference in the last year or two for us as campaigners. So we are going to ask Jo Hetherington, who is a pollution officer at the council and was involved in writing the content with Helena, to give us to speak next. Jo, are you ready to unmute yourself? And
sure. Hi everyone. It's been great to work on the toolkit, and I'm really glad it's out, and I really hope it's useful for everyone. As I think Frances is going to go through the actual toolkit itself, so I won't go into the different actions in detail, but just to say there are many different actions. Different actions will be more appropriate for different schools, and some of these actions are things that hopefully schools can do themselves, and some of them are things that they'll need input and support from their council. But even if it's actions that you can take yourself, it's also useful sometimes to have advice and experience of other people that have done those actions. So we hope this toolkit is a starting point to show you some of the actions that you can take, but also how you can move forward and progress with those. I don't know if you're going to bring up the slides later at any point, but there's some images there that show some of the actions we have taken in the past. But that's things like with schools, we've got a range of different experiences. So that's things like idling events, training with schools to run their own events as well, monitoring outside schools, running clean air day events, closing roads, or poster competitions, whether that's workshops with pupils to monitor the pollution themselves, and then the creation of maps from that, or assemblies to the rest of the school, whether that's changes in road layouts outside schools, or the school streets programme, closing the roads at pick up and drop off time, advice over energy, active travel. There's a range of different things that we can help give advice on. Also actions that I think you'll go into later in case studies that schools have taken themselves or parents have taken on themselves. So there's lots of different experience and advice out there. In the toolkit, we've also tried to bring together all the sort of most appropriate contacts in the council, because there's lots of different places to go. So for example, if that's the pollution team, it might be good for, we might be good for advice about monitoring or idling events, or things in the toolkit that you're not quite sure where to go next. Whereas public realm team might be better for things like school streets or road safety. And then there's specific teams for play streets or energy advice, and then ways to contact your counsellor, for example. And then we've also grouped together information about funding sources we've used with schools in the past, or resources. So there's lots of different things coming up at the moment, whether that's help with planning your green screening or lesson plans. And these are changing all the time. So we're hoping that this toolkit will continue to update it, and we're happy to take in extra suggestions as well. And that's really all I had to say at the moment. So.
Thank you, Jo. That's really insightful. It's good to get a little bit more of insight into what's in the toolkit, and also that it's a changing document. This is a working document. It's not sort of like this is a Bible on how to do it. We're all learning, and we're all seeing ways to improve things. So you know, we'll all have a chance to hopefully feedback and, you know, find ways to improve it, really. So thank you very much, Jo. I think next up we've got Francis, who's going to give us a presentation with some more detail about the whole Clean Air Toolkit. So over to you, Francis.
Yes, thank you. Hi, hello everybody. I'm Francis, and I have a child who started primary school in Islington. Hopefully everyone can now see the slides. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly take you through the whole toolkit, so that hopefully you'll feel a bit familiarized with it. And also it's sort of based around a lot of questions. I think some of them you've already heard that we've had as parents moving forwards, trying to do something about air quality for our children, really. So the first, I'm just going to jump straight in. I think the first one of those questions is often comes up is, why is air quality actually important? And I think probably a lot of you already know, and that's why you're here, but you know, it covers all sorts of things such as lifelong physical and neurological impacts, such as you know, stunted lung growth. That's going to have lifelong impacts on people, on children, and the negative impact that air quality can have on attention and learning within schools, all the way to worsening conditions that children, especially children, already have, such as asthma. And I mean, normally if we were all in a room, we'd all have an opportunity here to put up our hands and perhaps share a bit why air quality is important to us. But if you'd like to put something in the chat at the moment about how air quality affects you, that would be really interesting to take a look at afterwards. Second question is, well, why do we need a toolkit? And well, you've heard quite a bit, so I'm just going to pull it all together, because, you know, I mean, we know that schools can't really control most of the external sources of air pollution that are polluting our air, especially here in central London. But there are actually, when you get down to it, a lot of things that parents and schools can do together, and that can really have a positive effect on air quality. But I think, as Joe mentioned before, every school is different, and the toolkit is really there to come in and provide that overview as to what is possible and help us all sort of make the choices and get to some effective action more quickly. The toolkit itself is actually quite an easily digestible 15-page PDF document that you can download on our Islington Clean Air Parents website, and also find it on the council website. As you've heard, I mean, it's endorsed by the council and us as parents as well, so it sort of has that backing to anyone who uses it. And we try to make it in that short document to the point, so we can all get on and doing what we need to do. Really, I guess, getting down to the meat of it, of the toolkit itself, there's four main parts there. It's what can we do, and what are all those measures that are possible to help us decide. So now what? How can we actually get started with all that? And then 2 appendices, one with case studies, and we're going to hear a couple now, to help inspire and to learn from. And then also, as Joe mentioned, a resource at the end with contacts and other documents and things that I'll quickly give you an overview of. So I'm going to give you over to Helena, who's going to talk to you about her case study, well, her school and her experience.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you. Yeah, so I thought to just start sharing this map that some of you might have seen before, but it's the London Air Annual Pollution Maps, which shows the NO2, the nitrogen dioxide levels, or mean levels in London. It's 2016 data, but it's still representative also of the situation, and that's a news data that's available on this site. But have a look as well on their website. It's londonair.org.uk, that you can get an update on the daily air quality in your postcode as well. So, but yeah, so the color scheme, just to, if you're not familiar with the maps, at the sort of darker blue up to yellow, that's the legal levels of NO2, and then when you get from yellow up to the darker reds, that's when it crosses that boundary, and it's 40 micrograms per meter cubed, and that's illegal. But having said that, of course, so even though it's looking better towards the north of the borough, it's still not safe. Even though it's legal, doesn't mean necessarily that's safe, and it's particularly not for children and vulnerable individuals in particular. And as Francis raised before, some of the results that air quality can have on our lives, that's lifelong. So looking closer at the maps, at the bottom of the map, my primary school is Grafton, and so at the bottom, that's on the left-hand side of that little smiley face, and then on the right-hand side, that's where we live. So we live in between between us and the school. There's 3 heavily polluted roads that we need to cross. So when so to walk into school, we need to cross these roads, and it's just one of those images that I just can't get rid of. Is that when my youngest Henny, she's now 7, she's near 2. When I had her in the sling, we were walking around the borough and quite a long stretch along Holloway Road, and she was wearing a white onesie. We got home and it was grey. This was 2014, and I just cannot forget that sort of realization of exactly how polluted these roads are, and also how short you have to be exposed to it to really have an effect. So when Henny then started primary school, a few years later, it's the worst part of my day was the school run, to take her and then her youngest sister in between our sort of safe haven into the next safe haven, and sort of crossing these really polluted streets. So Francis, next slide, please. Thank you. Now, the good thing, of course, wonderful thing when you start school is that you get really quick access to a lot of other parents, and you exchange a lot of information, and it very quickly I realized there's a lot of other parents sharing my concerns. So quite quickly, a number of us, we got together and we started talking about our concerns and the air that our children were now exposed to, and it sort of became quite obvious that we need to do something about it. This was the time we still can go out for a cup of coffee, so we did, and started to identify what were the things that we knew and what were the things that we didn't know. And then we reached out to our headmistress, Nissa Sergidis, who I believe is with us tonight, and we started the conversation with her, the deputy head at Grafton. Together, we identified areas of our main concern, and for us, that is the surrounding roads in particular, as Grafton is positioned between Holloway Road and Seven Sisters Road. And we spoke about, what are the things that we could do. One very key concern that all of us shared was at the end of the day, all of the children and the parents were leaving the school via one entrance straight out to Holloway Road, and that's the picture on the top of this slide. And we then, very many of us had to take the route, Holloway Road, Seven Sisters Road, in some ways unnecessarily. And we explored if there were ways that we could, clearly my preference would be to stop the traffic. And we actually asked if we could do something about that too, but obviously TfL roads is not within the council's remit to control that. But what is it that we could do within our control? And we looked at where the children were actually exiting the school and were there other options that we could take advantage of. And as it happened, there was one exit that could be a possibility. It was at the time, it was bricked up, so it was closed to the children. Actually, I believe quite a lot of legacy, but it was something about the dwellings in this little street leading into the school. They were not very keen on the noise that's been made by the children coming and going several years ago, and hence it's been bricked up. And we thought, well, now is the time to change. The safety and the well-being of the children is more important than a little bit of noise a couple of minutes in the morning, in the afternoon. And to our absolute delight, Nissa shared this concern with us. I just had a little visitor. So sorry, a bit distracted. She shared this concern with us and took it in our own hands with our strong support to actually investigate, what is that we can do. We wrote our local councillors, we spoke to the air pollution team and so forth. I must admit it took a little bit of time that we didn't feel that we had. With the parents' strong support, they decided to open the gates or the exit, and which instantaneously changed the lives of hundreds of children and made their experience so much more pleasurable and so much safer. So it was just extraordinary how that happened. But yeah, and then as part of that, we also applied for school streets. So that was 2018. As a result of how the school is positioned, we also looked at where the school streets were needed. We had one, we realized we needed two, and again with engagement with the local councillors, working with the school that was already really ahead of the curve on this, but just needed a little bit extra, I suppose, support from us, and the extra sort of nagging and bringing it up to the decision makers' attention, that we needed to have two school streets. So, and particularly more important with the new exits, that we didn't just change one street that was calm and peaceful, and then created a new hub of idling cars that the children now had to navigate through instead of Holloway Road. But it was just a new, previously quite calm street that became the new hub, as that was the only streets remaining for drop off via car. So we managed together, I think there was a lot of sense that was seen, and I'm so delighted that this year, 2021, 2 school streets for Grafton has been just newly implemented, both Hercules Street and Ewan Road, and it's just going to make such a big difference for the school and for all the children today and in the future. And I just want to thank Nitsa, Tegidis and her deputy head, and also of course the air pollution team and the local councillors for just making this happen. It took a little bit of time, a little bit of magic dust, and I'd say quite a bit of courage particularly from some individuals, and just I think a realization that we don't have the time. It's our children's health and well-being we're talking about, and sometimes we just need to really take matters in our hands and make things happen. So with no further ado, I'll hand it back to you, Francis.
Great, thank you very much. That was a really inspiring story, and for all of us. And that brings us to sort of the first part, I guess, really of the meat of the measures of, well, what can we do in the toolkit? And I'm just going to take you through the 4 parts of that. Really, this is the first part, engagement, and I think one of the key things there's a little sample of some of the measures on here, but one of the key things there, I think, as Helena said, is establishing a working group of people who sort of share concern there to move things forward. And I guess what I'd just quickly bring to your attention, I guess, is that this table here is sort of the format in which a lot of these measures are just really put down in a succinct way. So what is the action, what is the why behind it, and then to the right also giving a sense of how deliverable is it in terms of, is it short-term, long-term, and sort of how much comparatively cost there might be involved with that. I'll take you quickly to the next part, which is what we can do getting to school. So there a couple of examples are the suppliers even to the school, who does the school get supplies from, how are they delivered, so there can be some quick wins there, and also then the school pick up and drop off, and I guess this whole aspect of active travel, and as we'll see later, school streets in another part as well, but the I guess behavioral part of that. And that will bring me right to really talking about behavior, to our next case study, which Rachel is going to introduce.
Thank you, Francis, and thank you, Helena, for that really inspiring story. It's amazing. So I'm Rachel, and I am a co-founder of Islington Cleaner Parents. I have 2 children at a primary school just off Pentonville Road in Islington. A few years ago, I became very aware of the dangers of air pollution and how the toxic emissions can damage children's growth and leave them with long-lasting health problems. I also discovered children suffer the greatest exposure during the school run and whilst at school rather than when they're at home. At the time, air pollution around our school reached the EU legal limits. I was very concerned. I didn't know what to do to protect my children from toxic air. I was so worried, I'll be honest, it kept me awake at night. So I shared my concerns with other parents, and thankfully I found some of them felt the same. This kick-started my journey into taking some action. Lucy has already mentioned she's a parent of children in Islington School. It's actually the same one as I'm in. So we spoke about what we were going to do to take some action. Sorry, just bear with me one moment. I've just lost something that I was looking at. There we go. So Lucy also has children in the same school, and I was really thankful to hear that she'd actually raised concerns with the head before we'd actually spoken about it, and she'd asked for an air filtration system to be installed. Initially, our head felt that the school had too many other pressures and time and resource commitments and that the council were the people to speak to about external air pollution. It's something which we've actually heard from other members of our group that can be quite a common experience. At the time, there was a bit of a disconnect between schools, parents and the council, and as previously mentioned, our aim was to bridge that gap by collaborating with the council on the Clean Air Toolkit for schools. So Lucy at our school began raising awareness by talking to other parents, and we met for a coffee in the back in the days when you could do that. And we took it from there with the following actions. We identified our concerns about air pollution at our school. We set up a Clean Air Parents WhatsApp group with which grew quite quickly as more parents joined from each year. We shared our concerns, our information, our ideas, and it was really, really important that we had that support from other parents. We began raising awareness across the school and with the head through conversations at school gates, emailing links to air quality reports from national newspapers, and asking questions in various meetings. We had some clear goals. We campaigned first for air filtration and then for a school street. Being able to show that many parents were concerned and creating momentum raised the importance of air pollution on the agenda of the school leadership, which resulted in some decisive action. Our heads carried out air quality testing on site and researched and installed air filtration in all the classrooms. Then we turned our attention to the school street and campaigned for that, which thankfully came into effect in September last year. The very narrow street had been used as a cut through by HDVs, as you saw in the slide photograph, vans, taxis, as well as cars. It was extremely busy, lots of shouting, horns honking, really dangerous driving, and obviously incredibly toxic fumes. It's now much safer, cleaner. At drop-off and pick-up times, the head, the parents, the children have really embraced it, with the school providing more bike storage, and many parents have been making alternative arrangements to driving. And so we're seeing a lot more parents now coming by on foot or by bike instead of by car. And it's made a really big difference to the area generally, but also it's opened up lots of conversations about air pollution and the environment amongst parents and the school. And I guess the key message from my experience was that to create a group of parents and raise awareness is the key. And with that in mind, we also worked with the council to produce the air pollution FAQ page that Lucy mentioned earlier. And we can share that with you later on. But please do also share some success stories that you've got from your schools in the chat. It would be lovely to hear from you as well. And I will now pass you back to Francis. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Rachel. I'm going to jump right on then to the third of our four so groups of measures, and I think it's for internal changes in the school, and that's I think what Lucy and Rachel were starting off with theirs, with looking at filtration systems to try and improve the air in the school itself. So that's what that section is looking at, and also covers things like cleaning, what sort of cleaning materials are used in the school, because that can actually have quite an effect also. And the last so group of measures, got two examples here, are external changes. That involves things like greening, things that absorbing pollution through plants, or sort of creating a barrier to polluted streets. And as we just heard in the last, well, in both case studies, actually, school streets. And on that note, I'm going to hand you back again quickly to Joe, who's just going to take us a bit more through some of these things that the council has been involved in.
Hi, so it's just a few examples of some projects we've worked on. So rather than just going one big example, it's a few different things. So with Idling Action, we're involved in a project around London, and we can do anti-idling events at schools will come around, speak to parents or other vehicles as well that are idling outside of school, just to explain the impact that might have on pollution and ask them to turn off. We've also got a game which you can see in one of the pictures, which can get the children involved and can be put in a playground. It's like a snakes and ladder game. That top picture is also taken on a day that was for an event we helped school create on Clean Air Day, where we closed one of the roads outside the school and put out the posters that the children were created earlier in the day in a workshop. There was games to play, just the street was open for the children to sort of draw on, things like that. At the bottom is our monitoring that we put up outside schools, the diffusion tubes, and they're outside every school in the borough at the moment, and they give monthly values of pollution. And then on the right is the recent winner of the Clean Air Day competition, where our schools were asked to, or pupils at schools were asked to submit a poster, and then that's been put up and used around the borough. It's gone onto Twitter. It's been sent out to schools as banners as well. Is there another slide? Next slide. And then the two images on the left were, we had funding for a school audit through the mayor's scheme, and then we helped that school implement some of the recommendations from that audit. And one of them of those was more engagement work at the school. So helped to organise a workshop with the pupils where they had handheld monitors and they took them around the local streets and measured pollution at various points. So it was kind of a good way to them to actively see the pollution levels at different places. And they kind of did a 5 and 10 minute walking. So again, how far the children themselves could walk in that time period rather than striding off somewhere. And then we used that to create a map which showed those 5 and 10 minute zones and some of the more or less polluted routes. And then the other recommendation which we helped implement was green screening around the playground. The school is located near some roads on either side and then the buildings, and it helped create not just like a visual barrier, and it's got a more polluted road at the end. So again, it was that the barrier between the roads and the school playground. And this is another example of some planting and green screening that went into another school that we helped implement in Archway. And then over on the right is an example of a scheme that the Public Realm team were involved with, changing the sort of street landscape outside of school to help encourage more active travel, slow down traffic, and just change the area outside the school. And then the bottom one is an example of just the school streets image. And I think we've gone into that a few times of how the school street scheme works. So I won't go into that one in detail, but that was just a few examples of different case studies of projects we've worked with schools on.
Great, thank you very much, Jo, for telling us a bit more about those. And that really, I guess, brings us into the so what, so now what of the toolkit, into those actions and how we can actually move forward. And we've heard a bit about that, but I think just to reiterate that we think creating small groups of interested people is a very helpful place to start. That there's a lot of quick wins that you can get going with, while also planning and thinking longer term. And of course, getting in touch with the Islington Council pollution team and with us at Clean Air Parents, who can help with ideas, support, and I think most importantly also networking with other parents and schools who are having similar issues, looking for similar solutions. Then the last part of the toolkit, before I finish up, is really about the contacts and resources. So I won't go into that because we've touched on some of those before. I think one of just the most interesting ones are the Council's own air quality website. If you Google Islington Council air quality, you'll come up with it. You'll find things about school streets, also about the monitoring at schools and the reports based on that. So you can see the levels that have been measured at the different schools and the FAQs that were mentioned that can hopefully help answer a lot of questions. And at the bottom there, we've also got londonair.org.uk, which is sort of the source with information about air pollution that the mayor uses, the council uses, and you've got the maps of annual or daily air pollution that you can look at, and also sort of connect to air quality forecasts as well to understand how the air is looking. And as Joe also mentioned, a collection of potential funding sources to start off with. And that I guess really sort of is the toolkit in a nutshell. So I'm going to hand it right up back to Lucy, so who's going to take your questions about the toolkit and or any questions in the chat. So hopefully we can answer as many of those as possible in the remaining time. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Francis. That's fabulous. Thank you for your presentation. It showed how comprehensive the toolkit is and how easy it is to use, but also what was really interesting, and for somebody like I've been campaigning for changes at our school, it's been quite inspirational to make me think actually there's so much more we can still do. The examples of what other schools are doing and some of the projects that the council has been working on has actually really inspired me to think, oh, I kind of quite like some more sort of things happening in our streets, in the school streets, and greening opportunities. So thank you very much, Francis, and Helena and Rachel, for talking so eloquently about your own experiences and sharing those, so to kind of give us an idea of what really can be done. So thank you very much. We'd like to open up questions to the floor. That's really, I'm sure, why you're here. And I think there's two different ways you can do it. We'd love for you to ask your questions in person. And if you'd like to do that, please either put your hand up visibly in the screen, and I shall hopefully see you, or put your hand up on your little screen where you can put a blue hand up, I think. If you don't want to ask a question in person, by all means, please do put it in the chat, and Helena will be asking questions. I know there's been a few questions in the chat, so we will answer those too. So has anybody got a question that they would like to get going and ask us? I can see a hand up from Miranda. So Miranda, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, yeah, thank you. Thanks very much for that. It was really brilliant to listen to and really helpful. I just wanted to ask Rowena what schools on main roads can do, because obviously it's much harder when the school is on the main road. So if there's anything specific for schools on main roads, that would be really useful.
No, I agree. It is more problematic. The team is looking at what they can do on the individual schools. So it's not like we're saying, well, actually, this is really too difficult. We're just going to park it, and we're not going to try and tackle it. But yes, shutting the A1 is not really an option for many people. So I think people have sort of come up with a few ideas, like trying to change the entrance, for example. And there are a few. There's only one school I know that we could do that on. But then there's around green screening, possibly creating some space. So there are, as I say, there are some things that can be done, and we are looking at that as we go forward, looking at the individual schools to come up with what actually can be done. So the Canterbury School at the moment has got we've extended the pavement a little bit, and that's around about social distancing as well. It may well be something that you can create you might be able to create some more space, whereas you can't cut off a major artery. But I think for me, green screening may not be a magic bullet, but it's really, really interesting. It's really interesting for a number of reasons. One, I think, because it really helps air pollution, but also just greenery just makes people feel better. So I would have thought as a kind of a minimum, actually, looking at green screening might be where often where we start. The problem with that, of course, can be quite expensive, and it needs to be the right type, and it needs to be maintained as well. So yeah, don't worry, we haven't just kind of said, oh, this is too hard, we're not going to bother, and we are looking at it. It takes more time, and it's actually also quite a lot more expensive as well, but it is underway.
Thank you. And we've got Harry with his hand up on that. So Harry, would you like to unmute yourself?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks very much, Lucy, and thanks, Councillor Rowena. We haven't spoken before, but I'm concerned about the green screens because I really agree that it's really important for us to improve our environment psychologically as well as from a health point of view. I'm very sort of frustrated I can't get to the bottom of good data about measuring. What most concerns me is that we get good data about air filtration in schools. And I've been very keen on green screens and green walls in the past, and invited the director of a company called Watermatic to come to our school, which is Whitehall Park School. And he had the opportunity, he came in person, which he doesn't often do, spent some time advising the head at the time, and I went round with him, and was enthusiastic about how we could improve some planting and put in a green screen, a green wall. And he had the opportunity potentially to cultivate some business, because I was very enthusiastic at the time and the PTCA were interested in funding it. But when I came to ask him what impact he thought it would have, he said, oh, so forget it from a point of view improving air quality. It will do nothing. It will do something, but it won't be measurable. And he was the person who was in a position to sell me that idea. And I've spoken to experts, researchers into air movement, which is very complex. And as far as I can get to the bottom of it at the minute, on the other side of a green screen, you can measure some benefit. But it's a bit like putting a sponge into a bucket of water. You can cover one side of the sponge and water won't enter from that side of the sponge. Water will just enter from the other side of the sponge. In terms of the long-term effects of pollution and the air movement, as far as I can understand it, I'm not an expert. For the people I've spoken to people for hours about this, is that you're very unlikely to see any real reduction in particulate and NOx pollution inside the classroom with green screens. And as much as I like them, I think it's a positive move. It does seem to be disproportionately expensive and a bit of a greenwash, in fact.
Is that sort of, I think it's a range of measures. I do also think the points you make about air movement is really quite important. And I think one of the things we know is it's not just for us, we can't just do this on our own. And that's why the pan-London policies that are coming in has to be sort of across London and actually across the country, but certainly across London, because a lot of our air blows in from other boroughs, and we blow our air in across other boroughs as well. So I mean, there are some things that you can do locally, but actually the most important thing is just to try and make sure that the air pollution is tackled on an area base. I mean, I think for me, I think ULEZ coming into the congestion zone has been very, very beneficial, and obviously in October it gets extended out to the North and South Circular. So I absolutely agree, air movement is really important. We do have to look at what we're doing, and I agree with you, it probably isn't enough to just say, well, let's stick a green screen up, but we do need to actually look at the range of options that we can bring to an individual school. As I say, if it is on a main road, it is very difficult. I mean, until we tackle sort of pollution through cars and through vans, it's important. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do, as you probably know, is we're trying to improve people's experience in walking and cycling, because the school run, I think, as someone has mentioned, has a real impact on the amount of traffic that's on the roads. And I think lots of parents, I think that they're doing best for their children by bringing them in a car, but actually we know that's just not true. It's impacting on their own children, but it's also impacting on everyone else's children as well. So absolutely, so individual measures outside schools, but also trying to reduce the number of people who are using cars in Islington is really important. I don't want to people-friendly streets where we're trying to create areas and corridors where people can move through, can cycle and can walk. I mean, for us, we think is really important as well.
Thank you, Rowena. I've got a few questions. I can see people's hands raised. I've had a question come in directly asking, just on the topic of green walls, is there any funding available? I'll ask that question in a sec. And then Helena, Katia, and then it's I've got questions, so we'll come to you in turn. So yes, Rowena, is there any funding available for green walls, or any other measures to be taken?
I think it's a question of actually working with people, and then looking at what funding is available, because there are different pots. I mean, it would be wrong of me to say that we have inexhaustible supplies of money, because we don't. But there are ways sometimes of funding things. But I think it's a question of actually looking at what we want. It may be that we then adjust what we can do to fit the pot of money. But I do really think it's important for schools. I don't think people should feel that they shouldn't be thinking about what they're doing because people are constrained by money. That sounds awful. I know people's time is very valuable. But starting about it, having a conversation and working out what we can do, I think is just really, really important.
Okay, thank you. I've also noticed that 2 yellow hands are up, so we will come to everybody before we finish. But Helena, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on, because monitoring came up, and Anita asked in the chat about monitoring of particular matter 2.5 and outside schools, and then also if there's monitoring inside schools happening. And I guess maybe Joe could answer that question.
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. In terms of the particulate matter, there's not monitoring outside every school, no. We've got the diffusion tubes monitor nitrogen dioxide, not particulate matter. There hasn't really been a easily deployable monitor for particulate matter that can go outside every school. We have a few sensors that have gone up outside some schools to get an idea of particulate matter, but it's not possible at the moment to easily do that with the technology we have to put them outside every school. And then the other question about internal, we have monitored inside a few schools. With COVID, that has all stopped at the moment, and we won't be going into the schools anymore. We kind of tried to carry it on for a bit, but we've kind of made that decision now not to try and do that internal monitoring going forward. Also, when we put the monitors out, it's sort of a day we have to go and change them around every month, so it wouldn't be possible potentially to put them in every school, so we'd have to look at whether there was a particular case for it at that school. But there are also ways that you can potentially also get monitoring in place yourself to do internally, so the diffusion tubes, but just bearing in mind that they're going to give you a monthly reading rather than showing sort of peaks and troughs throughout the day. I think there's also a few schemes at the moment that can loan you monitors. I was I think Helena, I think you might have been there last night as well. They said they had some monitors that that pupils can wear. So there's a few schemes like that about as well that might give you some monitoring that you could do either on the way to school or internally as well.
Thank you. Katia, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, hi, thank you. My daughter is attending Whitehall Park School as well. Unfortunately, I found out that the school was the most polluted of the borough, according to the audit 2018 audit. So I'm very concerned actually, because the school is on Onsey Lane, which is, I find, horrific in terms of traffic, and it seems to get worse. So I know those type of B roads are very difficult to tackle. And I was wondering, because we have this ridiculous situation where just in front of the school, you have 6 parking spaces, which not only force vehicle to idle because it produces congestion, and those parking spaces should really not be there. The thing is, there is this complex situation where the road is, I think, managed by 2 different councils, by Islington and Haringey, if I'm not mistaken. Who is responsible? Who do we need to talk to, first of all, to get rid of those parking spaces, which really should not be in front of a school that is the most polluted of the borough? That's the first thing. And basically, we don't know what to do, because we are going to try, me and some other parents within the school, including Aline Napier, to talk to the school management to improve the indoor air quality, which is already quite a big hurdle. But then also in terms of the outdoor pollution, we don't know what to do. We have a school street. Unfortunately, that school street is a street that really didn't produce most of the pollution. The issue is Onsey Lane, and we have this complex problem to solve, and we are lost because we don't know what to do. Do we do a screen wall, like a green wall in front of the school? Because we do have a small wall that could maybe have ivy plants on. Do we push the council? Which council is it to remove the parking space? We are a bit overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed because it's already, raising awareness is already a big deal. It's a lot of work and a lot of time. I think it will be quite a challenge, but we are up for it. But we need some kind of support from the council, being Islington and Haringey, to tackle the situation outside of the school, which is just appalling at the moment, considering it's the most rated school of the borough. Something, I mean, the council said that they would impose bold measures. We are waiting for those. And one last point, I'm very in support of the low traffic zone. I'm fully behind it. The thing is, I think it's important to implement those in a very holistic and smart way, because some of those zones push the traffic on main roads where there are nurseries and schools already affected by illegal level of pollution. And I would find it horrifying if the traffic in front of Whitehall Park would increase because we are shutting down other streets. You know, I think it's a matter of balance, and I don't know what's the solution, but that's why I'm asking for the council support to tackle this big problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rowena, would you like to respond?
In terms of the parking spaces, it's a borough road, so there'll be an agreement. Unfortunately, I can't remember whether it's us or Haringey, because a local authority will take responsibility for it. But it's always right to us, and then we can, if we're managing it. But anyway, if it's outside in Islington space, then we'll obviously have responsibility. So would you mind writing to us, and then actually setting out what it is that you're asking, and then I can pass it on to the relevant.
Sure.
Again, I can't promise. I mean, Hornsey Lane, I know, is a very, very difficult road, and it's yeah. So, but if you set out what you're writing, I don't know if Joe can come in. Joe can come on anything. I'm not really sure there's anything particularly that Joe that was asked of. Joe, is there anything that you'd like her to come in on?
It's often, lots of those things I think are more public realm, so I can't specifically answer the questions, and I haven't looked at the situation specifically at Whitehall in terms of what was going. So yeah, I think writing in, and then we can try and get answers for you. It's probably the best starting point for now.
Thank you, Joe. I know you've got your hand up, Harry, but we've got several other questions to answer, and I'm really conscious that it's 1 minute to 8:30. If Rowena, have you got another sort of 5-10 minutes to stay on and answer a few more questions with Joe? Are you okay to do that?
Yes, I'm fine to.
Thank you very much. So I'll come to Theonitza, Peter and Alex, and then I think we'll wrap up for the evening. So Theonitza, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm the head of Grafton School, and Helena is one of my parents. And if I can say this, Helena, you were absolutely brilliant, and you're very proactive, and thank you for looking after our children. I've been in Islington for 50 years teaching, and I remember Holloway Road having a lot more trees than what we've got right now. And I'm just wondering if the council is prepared to invest a little bit of money into planting more trees, you know, on the A1. I mean, the pavements are quite narrow. Where Grafton School is, sorry, not quite narrow, but wide. I don't see why we can't plant more trees. We worked some time ago, some years ago, with the Nax Head Forum to get some money to plant. We've got some planters in Holloway Road, if you think back, opposite the city in Islington, for example. And why can't we do a lot more of that? Have more planters in the roads, have more trees to create aesthetically beautiful, but also healthy. The A1, we know, you all know how busy it is. There's nothing we can do, and Rowena was right. We can't close the A1. However, we can do something a little bit more to create that kind of green space that will help the pedestrians, for example. Hopefully, you know, traffic would respect the green spaces. And, you know, it's another way of cleaning the air, isn't it? That's what I think. But I don't know what happened to the trees. I've been around for many years. I've only worked in 2 schools, Pakeman and Grafton, and yet there are less and less trees. So maybe if there's a bit more money, we can move on with that.
I mean, I think greening the borough is something that's sort of quite a hot topic, and it'd be interesting to hear if you have any thoughts on it now. If not, to respond later, Rowena.
Yeah, in terms of air pollution and trees, that's an interesting one, which I don't know to what extent. I think it depends on the height of the trees and all sorts of things. Yeah, Holloway Road is a TfL road. I've known the Holloway Road for a very long time as well. I can't quite remember looking back into the 1970s if I remember there being. And I know that for some main roads there's real issues now with the amount of services underneath, because we were looking at trying to do something with Seven Sisters, for example, Seven Sisters Road, and actually trying to find locations where you can put trees becomes more difficult. But I mean, it's certainly, as I say, it isn't our road and they're not our pavements. But I can certainly ask the officers if there are places for trees to be planted. But as I say, from an air quality point of view, I think that sometimes it's kind of the low hedging, which then gives you antisocial behaviour and other issues which come with the Holloway Road.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sinitsa. That was lovely to hear from you. And thank you for coming. Pete, would you like to ask your question?
Sure, yeah. My name's Pete. I'm a PhD researcher in air quality at Imperial. And it was very interesting to listen to the different ideas and concerns. I am in the process of developing an air purifier that I'm hoping that will be schools will be able to build themselves. And the kit will be about £150, which is a lot cheaper than you can buy otherwise. It's using CAM-fill filters, which is pretty good for PM, but it's no good for nitrogen dioxide, which comes out of exhaust as well. But I thought I would share my...
We've lost you. We've lost you on mute. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Sorry, I think that was me. I've shared my email address with you, Lucy. So if anyone is interested in piloting these monitors that I'm making, if they could send you an email, and then
I think we've got some takers on that, Pete.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, just to let you know that's in the process of being made. And if you have any questions about anything specific related to air quality, and you need an expert of some kind, then I'll be here to help.
Thank you. That is very interesting. I think it's a question that many parents have is, how do we monitor the levels of pollution inside the school, outside the school? How do we know if what we're doing is effective? So it is, it's actually, the more information we can get, the better. So obviously we'd love to carry on talking to you, Pete, and see, how you could maybe help some of the groups kind of learn what they're doing more. I'm going to thank you very much for that. I'm going to move on to Alex, if you'd like to ask your question.
Hi. First, thanks to everyone for this evening. It's been really helpful and we appreciate your time. So my son goes to Sacred Heart, which is just off Holloway Road and George's Road. We were part of the Safer scheme, trying to get the road closed, but a business objected, so that's been appealed. So we're waiting. But my biggest problem is parents who leave their engines running, I don't know what the issues are. I mean, I've tried politely, personally, a few times and always been met with, nasty people. So I know Joe mentioned the council runs something called a vehicles idling scheme or something. Is there a way we can find out about that and try and get that into our school and educate the parents, who I sometimes think are just as much a problem as, the other people driving around?
Yeah, if you contact us, we can help. Obviously, once we're able to go out and do these events more, it's been less able to do that with COVID at the moment. But yeah, we can run events outside the school. I think they're also looking at, it's not a project I'm specifically working on, but we're part of a London-wide scheme, and there's workshops that you can run in the school itself that then can educate parents, children, and then also sort of help you run events as well. But we can also come to the school and help do events outside at pick up or drop off time.
Fantastic. So Joe, which organisation are you part of?
The council, sorry. So if you just email the pollution team,
Fantastic.
Hopefully the contact should be on the toolkit and you can go from there.
Thank you so much.
Also, I think I might have posters as well.
Yes,
so hopefully you're going to mention that.
That'll be amazing. Thank you so much.
So Alex, we've also got, like yourselves, we've experienced lots of that problems with people idling on the way to school, at school, outside parks. So another nice collaboration we're doing with the council is that we've got posters that parents can put up outside their schools on lampposts. So yeah, you could, if you email us, islingtoncleanair@gmail.com, and you just tell us your name and the roads that you want to put the posters up, the number you need, and then you just take responsibility for keeping an eye on those posters, taking them down if they're tatty, etc. So it's very simple and straightforward, but it gives us the power to actually go and put signage up and do something about it, which is one of the things that I think we all feel really frustrated with this problem, that what can I actually do about this? How can I get the message out there? So we're really working on developing more and more things that can actually kind of increase signage around the borough that, kind of draws awareness to it. And Francis, you look like you've got a point to make on this particular one.
It was actually, I was just hoping to get in one last question.
Oh, one last question.
Yeah. I know we're running late. But
2 minutes to go.
If that's okay. I guess it was to Rowena and Joe, really. I mean, my child is going to Colpie, which is actually going to be finishing construction. It is actually in an area where there's some of the highest pollution, and the closest schools to it have some of the highest pollution at the moment in the borough. But I don't think anything has been done yet on the building side or the road side, anything in preparation for that, since the school doesn't actually exist yet. So I'm wondering if it's possible to perhaps get in touch with you to set up a meeting also with the head in the school, or perhaps even dealing with the planners in Islington, since it's a new building that has its own planning conditions and all of that, and see if there's some way, since it's a City of London school, to get the City of London perhaps even to pay for some of these measures that are coming in that will be needed.
You want to answer, Joe?
Yeah. Joe, do you want to answer? I mean, I think in terms of the actual physical school street, again, public realm would be better people to speak to. But if you want sort of more broader advice, I suppose, on how to build in something, Joe might be better than I am at that.
Yeah, again, we could try and set something up without looking more specifically and having a look. I can't give specific advice now, but yeah, we could certainly look at talking to it. We've also got contacts in City of London who work on the air pollution team. So again, it's something we could try and connect you to them as well.
Great, thank you very much. We will wrap up now. I have to say a huge thank you to our speakers, to Joe and Rowena for joining us this evening. Out of office hours, I know, but and for answering all our questions. It's been a real pleasure working with you and knowing that you're so supportive and committed to this. So thank you very much, and thank you, Joe, for all your work on the toolkit as well. That's super. Thank you to everybody who's spoken this evening and all your questions you've asked. And there's been some really, really brilliant questions, and I hope that there's going to be lots of actions coming out of this evening for you. I need to say a massive thank you to Helena for organising this evening and making it happen. So thanks very much for that. Going forward from here, we've now got this toolkit that we can all use to address air pollution. That could be tackling 60 sites across the borough. That can make a big difference if we can affect change across all of the school sites in the borough. So a few actions, very simple, that you can do. Download the toolkit from our website or from the Islington Council website. If you're not already a member, please join ICAP. It's very easy to do. Go to our website, subscribe. We get out less emails than we would hope to, so you won't be bombarded. But it does mean that you would be aware of meetings like this that come up, and any of the campaigns that we're doing, opportunities to get involved. And we always welcome new people with energy to join our committee, our core team. We've also got a WhatsApp group, which is very useful. People share information all the time about what's happening there across London, new initiatives. So that can be a very useful group. And join our meetings. So we try and have a meeting every couple of months. And also we mentioned join our anti-idling poster campaign with details on our website, which I believe Rachel has kindly posted in the chat for us. So we hope you find it really useful. I hope that it makes a real difference in campaigning for clean air for your child's school, and that you found this evening useful in terms of making contacts and learning from other parents and how they've done it. Do keep us updated. We'd love to hear how you get on and what your success is. You know, Whitehall Park School, you've got a big challenge ahead. We'd love to hear how you get on to, you know, stay in touch, Katia and Harry. And anybody else who's got a project. If we can support you or put you in touch with the right people, we would be really happy to. So thank you very much. Have a good rest of the evening, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you again at a future meeting. Thank you.